The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that blankets a small town at 11:30 p.m., broken only by the sudden wail of sirens. At Station 19, the call crackled through the radio, sharp and urgent. A 67-year-old man, Thomas Harper, was clutching his chest in a gated community called Willow Pines, his breath shallow, his left arm radiating with pain. Dispatch painted a grim picture: classic heart attack symptoms, a history of cardiac issues, and every second slipping away like sand through an hourglass. The crew of Engine 47 leapt into action, their boots pounding the concrete as they piled into the rig. Captain Sarah Mitchell's voice was steady over the radio, promising they'd reach the scene in 4 minutes. 4 minutes, the razor-thin line between life and death. Willow Pines was one of those upscale enclaves, all manicured lawns and wrought iron gates, the kind of place that screamed exclusivity. Most gated communities have emergency overrides, a legal requirement across the country to ensure first responders can get in fast. But Willow Pines was different. Its homeowners association, led by a clique of self-important types, had decided they were above such rules. No override, no Knox box, just a heavy gate and an intercom that might as well have been a paperweight. Lieutenant Daniel Carter was riding shotgun that night, his jaw tight as the fire truck screeched to a halt at the gate. He hopped out, flashlight in hand, and scanned the control box for the Knox box that should have been there. Nothing. He jabbed the intercom button, once, twice, 3 times. Silence. The radio crackled with his voice, edged with frustration, as he called dispatch for an alternate contact. Dispatch was striking out, unable to reach the community's security company. Every tick of the clock was a stab in the gut. Thomas Harper was dying, and this gate was his executioner. With no time to waste, Daniel made the call. "Grab the rebar saw," he barked. Firefighter Mike Torres hauled the beast of a tool from the truck, its gasoline engine roaring to life. Sparks flew like a 4th of July show as the blade bit into the gate's locking bar, metal screeching against metal. The crew shoved the gate open and floored it to Harper's address, tires squealing on the pristine asphalt. But those lost minutes, those precious, irreplaceable minutes, had already sealed Thomas Harper's fate. They found him on his bathroom floor, his wife, Eleanor, kneeling beside him, her hands trembling from performing CPR. The crew took over, their movements a blur of adrenaline and training, chest compressions, defibrillator pads for lines. But the heart attack was massive, a tidal wave that had swept Thomas away before they could throw him a lifeline. They worked until sweat soaked their uniforms, until there was nothing left to do but call it. The coroner arrived, and Thomas Harper's body was taken away, leaving a void in the air and a weight on the crew's shoulders. Back at the station, the mood was grim. Losing someone always hurt, but this one stung deeper. The crew replayed the call in their heads, haunted by the what-ifs. What if the gate had an override? What if they'd gotten there just a minute sooner? Firefighter Emily Gwynn, who'd been on desk duty that night, listened to the radio chatter and felt the same helpless anger. She wasn't on the truck, but the loss hit her just as hard. 2 days later, Emily was covering the front desk when a man in a sleek pinstripe suit strode in, his polished shoes clicking on the linoleum. He introduced himself as Raymond Voss, legal counsel for the Willow Pines HOA, and slid a thick manila envelope across the counter with a smirk that made Emily's skin crawl. "For your chief," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Emily's hands shook as she opened it. The HOA was suing the fire department for willful property damage. They were dragging the crew through the mud because they'd cut the gate to try to save a man's life. It was obscene, a slap in the face to every first responder who'd ever risked it all. She rushed the papers to Chief Maria Alvarez, whose face turned crimson as she read. "This is beyond belief," she growled, slamming the documents down. "They're blaming us for their failure to follow basic safety laws?" The entire station buzzed with outrage. How could anyone have the gall to sue firefighters for doing their job? The HOA's arrogance was staggering, their priorities twisted beyond reason. 3 months later, the case went to court, and the station rallied. Emily, Chief Alvarez, and the Engine 47 crew attended every session, their uniforms crisp, their resolve ironclad. The HOA's lawyer, a slick talker named Gregory Hale, spun a flimsy tale. The firefighters had, recklessly, damaged the gate when they could have called the security company or found another way in. The department's attorney, Laura Bennett, tore that argument to shreds. She presented radio logs pro-VYing the crew's desperate attempts to contact security, alongside expert testimony on how every second counts in a cardiac arrest. The math was brutal: 4 minutes to brain death, 6 to irreversible damage. The gate had stolen both. The courtroom held its breath when Eleanor Harper took the stand. A petite woman with silver hair and a quiet strength, she recounted the night her husband of 42 years collapsed, his voice weak as he called her name. She described the terror of performing CPR, the phone pressed to her ear as she begged 911 for help. When she spoke of hearing the siren stop at the gate, her voice cracked, and tears glistened in the jurors' eyes. "I thought help was here," she whispered. "But it was too late." The silence that followed was deafening. The judge, a no-nonsense veteran named Harold Grayson, delivered his verdict with barely restrained fury. He ruled wholly in favor of the fire department, slamming the HOA for their callous disregard for human life. He cited state fire codes mandating emergency access, and expressed disbelief that the HOA had ignored them for the sake of their precious gate's aesthetics. The penalties were steep. The HOA had to pay the department's legal fees, cover Thomas Harper's funeral costs, and replace the gate with a compliant Oni Dula 250,000 hit. Grayson made it clear their negligence had directly contributed to a man's death, and they'd paid dearly for it. The fallout was swift. The HOA board crumbled. All but one member either resigned or fled Willow Pines, their reputations in tatters. The residents, furious and grieved-vying, held an emergency meeting and elected new leadership committed to safety over vanity. But one departing board member, nobody knew exactly who, went out with a tantrum. The night they left, they trashed an HOA-owned house, smashing fixtures, punching holes in walls, and flooding the place by clogging drains and cranking faucets. It was a petty, vindictive act that screamed of their entitlement, and word around town was they faced arrest and a hefty bill for repairs. The new HOA board cited Station 19 to apologize, their faces flushed with shame. They'd installed a proper emergency access system and invited the crew to a community picnic as a peace offering. The gesture was heartfelt, but it couldn't erase the loss. Emily still thinks about Thomas Harper every time she passes a gated community, wondering if their gates hide the same deadly flaws. The court's ruling was a Tory, a loud rebuke of those who'd value property over people, but it came at a cost no one could repay. It's a story that lingers, a warning etched in tragedy. Rules exist for a reason, and ignoring them can kill.